April 2nd, 1900, Volume 3. Jesus judges according to the will with which one operates. This morning I had to suffer very much because of the absence of my dear Jesus. However, he repaid my pains by granting a desire of mine, of wanting to know something which I had been yearning for a long time. Then I went round and round in search of Jesus. Now I would call him with prayer, now with tears, now with singing. Who knows whether he might be wounded by my voice, and so let himself be found? But it was all in vain. I repeated my moans. I asked about him to whomever I found. Finally, when my heart felt it was dying and could take no more, I found him. But I could see him from the back, and remembering about a resistance I made to him, which I will write in the book of the confessor, I asked for his forgiveness. So it seems we placed ourselves in accord, so much so that he himself asked me what I wanted. And I said to him, "Be pleased to let me know your will about my state, especially what I must do when I find myself with little sufferings and you do not come. And if you do come, it is almost like a shadow. So not seeing you, I feel my senses present within me, and finding myself in this state, I feel as if I were adding something of my own, and as if it were not necessary to wait for the coming of the confessor in order to go out of that state. And Jesus, whether you suffer or not, whether I come or not, your state is always a victim. More so since this is my will and yours, and I judge not according to the works that one does, but according to the will with which one operates. And I, my Lord, it is fine, as you say, but it seems to me that I am useless and that much time is wasted, and I feel a bother, a fear. And then, having the confessor come, torments my soul, for it may not be your will. And he, "Do you think it is a sin to have the confessor come?" And I, "No, but I fear it is not your will." And he, "It is a sin that you must shun, even the shadow of it. But about the rest you must have no concern." And I, "If it were not your will, why remain there?" And he, "Ah, it seems that my daughter wants to escape the state of victim, doesn't she?" And I, all blushing, said, "No, Lord, I am saying this for those times in which you do not let me suffer and do not come. After all, let me suffer, and I will have no concerns." And Jesus, "To me it seems that you want to escape. Besides, do you know when I intend to come and communicate my pains to you, whether at the first, the second, the third, or even the last hour? So by distracting yourself from me and trying to go out, you occupy yourself with something else. And when I come, I will not find you prepared, and will turn around and go somewhere else." And I, all frightened, "May this never be, O Lord! I want to know nothing but your most holy will." And he, "Remain calm, and wait for the confessor." Having said this, he disappeared. It seems I feel relieved of a heavy weight by this speaking of Jesus. But in spite of this, the sorrowful pain of when Jesus deprives me of himself has not decreased in me. April 2nd, 1913, Volume 11. One who lives in the divine will is one humanity of Jesus, just as when he was on earth. He appeared to be just a man, but his person was the Son of God. I was all afflicted because of the privation of my sweet Jesus. When Jesus came from behind my shoulders, he placed his hand on my mouth, removed the bed sheets, which were so close as to prevent me from breathing freely, and then told me, "My daughter, the soul who does my will is my breath. And since my breath contains all the breaths of creatures, I administer breath to all from within the soul who does my will. This is why I moved the bedsheets away. I too felt my breathing hampered. And "Ah, Jesus, what are you talking about? Rather, I feel that you have left me and that you forgot all the promises that you made to me." And he, "My daughter, do not say this. You offend me and force me to make you feel what it really means to be left by me." Then he added with an air of sweetness, "One who lives in my will vividly represents the period of my life upon earth. On the outside I appeared just as a man, but at the same time I was also the beloved son of my dear Father. In the same way, the soul who does my will has externally the skin of humanity, while internally there is my person, inseparable from the most holy Trinity both in love and in will, just like me. So the divinity says, 'This is another daughter that we keep on earth. For love of her, we sustain the earth, because she does everything in our place.'" April 2nd, 1917, Volume 12. The pains of the privation of Jesus are divine pains. I was lamenting to my always lovable Jesus for his usual privations, and I said to him, "My love, what a continuous death! Every privation of you is a death that I feel, but such a cruel and ruthless death that, while it makes me feel the effects of death, it does not make me die. I cannot understand how the goodness of your heart can resist in seeing me suffer so many continuous deaths, and still make me continue to live." And blessed Jesus came for a little while, and pressing me to his heart told me, "My daughter, press yourself to my heart and draw life, but know that the pain which satisfies me and pleases me the most powerful, the one which most equals me, and is able to stand before me, is the pain of my privation, because it is a divine pain. You must know that souls are so bound to me as to form many links connected together within my humanity. As souls are lost, they break these links, and I feel the pain as if one member were detaching itself from the other. Now, who can connect these links together? Who can weld them in such a way as to make the split disappear? Who can make them enter into me again in order to give them life? The pains of my privation, because they are divine. My pain for the loss of souls is divine. The pain of the soul who cannot see me or feel me is divine. Since they are both divine pains, they can kiss each other, be linked to each other, stand before each other, and have such power as to catch the escaped souls and link them in my humanity. My daughter, does my privation cost you very much? And if it does cost you, do not keep as useless such a costly pain. As I offer it to you, do not keep it for yourself, but let it fly into the midst of the combatants. Snatch their souls from amid the bullets and enclose them in me. Place your pain as weld and seal, and then let it go round the whole world to make it catch souls and bring them all back to me. So, as you feel the pains of my privation, you will keep placing the seal of the reconnection. April 2nd, 1921, Volume 12. The soul who operates in the divine will gives for all and receives for all. I feel my poor mind as though stunned, and I lack the words to put on paper what I feel. If my Jesus wants me to write, he will deign to say in words what he infuses in me by means of light. I just remember that in coming he said to me, "My daughter, in one who prays, loves, repairs, kisses me, adores me in my will, I feel as if all were praying me, loving me, and so forth. In fact, since my will envelops everything and everyone in my volition, the soul gives me the kiss, the love, the adoration of all. And in looking at everyone in her, I give her as many kisses, as much love, as I should be giving to all. In my will, the soul is not content if she does not see me fully loved by all, if she does not see me kissed, adored, and prayed by all. In my will, things cannot be left half done, but must be complete. And I cannot give small things to the soul who acts in my volition, but rather immense things, which can be sufficient for all. I behave with the soul who acts in my volition like a person who wanted to have a work done by 10 people. Now only one of these 10 people offers himself to do the work. All the others refuse. Is it not fair that he give to that one everything which he should give to all 10? Otherwise, where would be the difference between one who acts in my will and one who acts in his own will? April 2nd, 1923, Volume 15. The divine will is seed of resurrection to grace, to sanctity, to glory. In the divine will there is the void of the human works in the divine. Knowledge is the eyes of the soul. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen all lovable and majestic, as though enwrapped within a net of light. Light he sent forth from his eyes, light he unleashed from his mouth, and at each word, at each heartbeat, at each movement and step of his. In sum, his humanity was an abyss of light. And Jesus, looking at me, bound me with this light, telling me, "My daughter, how much light, how much glory did my humanity have in my resurrection, because during the course of my life on this earth, I did nothing but enclose the supreme will in each one of my acts, breaths, gazes, in everything. And as I kept enclosing it, the divine volition prepared for me glory and light in my resurrection. And since I contain the immense sea of the light of my will within me, it is no wonder if, as I look, as I speak, as I move, so much light comes out of me as to be able to give light to all. Therefore I want to chain you and overwhelm you in this light, in order to sow in you as many seeds of resurrection, for as many acts as you keep doing in my will. My will alone makes soul and body rise again to glory. My will is seed of resurrection to grace, seed of resurrection to the highest and perfect sanctity, seed of resurrection to glory. So, as the soul emits her acts in my will, she keeps binding new divine light, because my will is light by nature, and one who lives in it has the virtue of transforming thoughts, words, works, and everything she does into light. Then afterwards I was saying to my sweet Jesus, I pray in your will so that my word, multiplying in it, may have a word of prayer, of praise, of blessing, of love, of reparation for each word of each creature. I would want my voice to rise between heaven and earth and absorb all human voices into itself, in order to give them back to you as homage and glory, according to the way you would want the creature to make use of the word. Now as I was saying this, my lovable Jesus placed his mouth close to mine, and blowing, with his breath absorbed my breath, my voice, my breathing into his. And as he put it, as though on the way in his will, it went through each human word, and changed words and voices according to what I had said. And as it went through them, it rose high, in order to do the office of all the human voices before God in the name of all. I remained amazed, and remembering that Jesus no longer speaks to me so often about his will, I said to him, "Tell me, my love, why do you no longer speak to me so often about your will? Is it perhaps because I have not been attentive to your lessons and faithful in putting your teachings into practice?" And Jesus, "My daughter, in my will there is the void of the human works in the divine, and this void must be filled by one who lives in my will. The more attentive you are in living in my will and in making it known to others, the sooner this void will be filled, in such a way that, as my will sees the human will hovering around within itself, as though returning to the origin from which it came, it will feel satisfied and will see its yearnings upon the human generation being fulfilled. It does not matter whether they are few, or maybe even one alone, because with its power my will can make up for everything, even with one alone, when it does not find others. But it is always a human will that must come into mine to substitute for everything that the others do not do. This will be so pleasing to me as to split the heavens and make my will descend, making known all the good and the prodigies it contains. Each additional entrance you make into my will pushes me to give you new knowledges about it, and to narrate to you more prodigies, because I want you to know the good you do, so that you may appreciate it and desire to possess it. And in seeing that you love it and appreciate it, I give you possession of it. Knowledge is the eyes of the soul. The soul who does not know is as though blind to that good and to those truths. In my will there are no blind souls. Rather, each knowledge brings her a greater length of sight. Therefore enter often into my volition, expand your boundaries in my will, and as I see this, I will come back to tell you more surprising things about my will. Now, while he was saying this, together we went round the earth for a little while. But oh, what fright! Many wanted to wound my beloved Jesus, some by knife and some by sword. And among them there were bishops, priests, religious, who wounded him deep into his heart, but with such torture as to strike fright. Oh, how he suffered and threw himself into my arms to be defended. I pressed him to myself and prayed him to let me share in his pains. He made me content by piercing my heart through with such vehemence that I felt a deep wound within me for the whole day, and Jesus came back repeated times to wound me. Now the following morning, as I was feeling strong pain, my sweet Jesus came back, saying to me, "Let me see your heart." And while he was looking, he told me, "Do you want me to heal you in order to relieve you from the pain you are suffering?" And I, "My highest good, why do you want to heal me? Am I not worthy of suffering for you? Your heart is all wounded, and mine, compared to yours, oh, how scarce is my suffering. Rather, if it pleases you, give me more pains." And he, squeezing me all to himself, continued to pierce my heart through with more pain, and then he left me. May everything be for his glory. April 2nd, 1931, Volume 29. How what the creature has of the most precious is the will. Power of the voluntary pains. The support. How the little flame is lit in the soul, and how it is nourished. My abandonment continues in the holy volition, But though abandoned, I feel vividly my reluctances in falling into the state of my usual sufferings. And these reluctances are caused by the struggles and by the impositions that there are over me. So in the bitterness of my soul, I was saying to my sweet Jesus, "My love, you want to make me fall into sufferings? Go ahead, but from myself I don't want to put my will in. You will do it yourself. I will be happy. But from myself I don't want to put anything." And Jesus, all afflicted, told me, "My daughter, what am I to do with your pains without your will? I do not know what to do with them, nor will they be able to serve me to disarm divine justice, or to placate my just indignation, because what the creature has, of the most beautiful and of the most precious, is the will. The will is gold. All the rest of hers are superficial things, things without substance, and the very pains are without value. On the other hand, if the gold thread of the spontaneous will flows in the pains, it has the virtue of changing them into most pure gold, worthy of he who suffered everything voluntarily, and even death itself for love of creatures. If I wanted pains without will, there is such an abundance of them in the world that I could take as much as I want. But since the gold thread of their will is missing, they are not for me. They do not attract me. They do not wound my heart, nor do I find in them the echo of my voluntary pains. Therefore they do not have the virtue of changing the scourges into grace. So the pains without will are empty inside, without fullness of grace, without beauty, without power over my divine heart. A quarter of an hour of voluntary pains is enough to make up for and surpass all the most atrocious pains that exist in the world, because these are in the human order, while voluntary ones are in the divine order. And besides, from the little daughter of my will I would never accept her pains without the spontaneity of her will. It was the will that rendered you beautiful and graceful in my eyes, that opened the currents of my manifestations on my divine will, and that with a magnetic force drew me to make my visits so often to your soul. Your will, sacrificed voluntarily for love of me, was my smile, my amusement, and had the virtue of changing my sorrows into joys. Therefore, I will rather content myself with keeping the pains only for myself, rather than making you suffer without the spontaneous acceptance of your will. Oh, how you would degrade yourself, and would go down to the low level of the children of the human will, losing the noble title, the precious characteristic of daughter of my will. In my will there is no forcing. In fact, no one forced it in creating the heavens, the sun, the earth, and man himself, but it acted voluntarily without anyone saying anything to it, for love of creatures. Yet it knew how much it was going to suffer because of them. So I want for one who wants to live of my will. Force is of the human nature. Force is impotence, is mutability. Force is the true character of the human will. Therefore be attentive, good daughter. Let us not change things, and do not want to give this sorrow to my heart too embittered. And I in my bitterness said, "My Jesus, yet those who are above me tell me, how can this ever be possible, that because of 4 or 5 people who wanted to do evil, he would send so many chastisements? Rather, our Lord is right that the sins are many, and therefore the scourges, and many other things that they say and that you know." And Jesus, all goodness, added, My daughter, how they deceive themselves! It is not because of the sin of the 4 or 5 who, with so much perfidy, have reached the point of calumnies. These will be punished individually, but it is the support that they have taken away from me. Your suffering served me as support. Once the support is taken away from me, my justice finds no one who sustains it, and remaining without a place to lean on, it made continuous and terrible scourges pour down during the time in which you have been free of your usual pains. But if the support had been there, even if it had happened, it would have been a 10th or a 5th. More so, since this support was formed of voluntary pains and was wanted by me, and in voluntary pains enters a divine strength. I could say that I myself, in your pains, made myself support in order to sustain my justice. Now, not having your pains, I lacked the material in order to form the support, and therefore my justice remains free to do what it wants. From this they should comprehend the great good I have done to all, and to the entire world, in keeping you for so many years in the state of voluntary pains. Therefore, if you don't want my justice to continue to shake the earth, do not deny me your voluntary pains, and I will help you. Do not fear. Let me do. After this, I abandoned all of myself in the divine fiat, with the fear that I might deny something to Jesus and that I might fail to do always the divine will. This fear tears my soul and makes me restless, and only in the presence of Jesus do I feel myself the peacemaker of long ago. But as soon as I lose sight of him, I return under the storm of worries, of fears, and reluctances. And my sweet Jesus, to cheer me, added, "Good daughter, courage, be cheered, do not lose heart. Do you want to know how the light of my divine will is formed in your soul? The repeated desires are like many breaths that, breathing over your soul, call the little flame, the little drops of light, to light up inside of it. And the more intensely you desire, the more it breathes to nourish the little flame and enlarge it more. If the breath ceases, there is danger that the little flame will be extinguished. So, in order to form and light the little flame, true and incessant desires are needed. And in order to mature and enlarge the light, love is needed that contains the seed of light. In vain would you breathe with your desires if the inflammable material were missing over your repeated breaths. But who places this little flame in safety in such a way as to render it everlasting, with no danger of being extinguished? The acts done in my divine will. They take the material for lighting the little flame of our eternal light, which is not subject to being extinguished, and they keep it always alive and always growing. And the human will, before this light, eclipses itself and becomes blind, and seeing itself blind, it no longer feels the right to act, and it gives peace to the poor creature. Therefore do not fear. I myself will help you to breathe. We will breathe together, so the little flame will be more beautiful and more refulgent. April 2nd, 1932, Volume 30. How the divine power will put a limit to the evils of man, and will say to him, "Enough, up to here." How our Lord shows with facts that he wants to give the kingdom of his will. I am always back in the holy divine volition, nor can I do without, because it being life, the life is always felt. One feels the breath, the motion, the warmth. So it is with the divine will. As one feels it, so does one feel its life, its warmth, its motion, and everything it encloses, with only this difference, that one pays attention now to one thing, that it encloses as life, and now to another. So I was thinking to myself, How can the creature ever return to be beautiful and holy as he came out of the creative hands of God, so as to realize the kingdom of his Fiat in the midst of the human family? And my beloved Jesus, surprising me, told me, "My daughter, all the works of our Supreme Being are perfect and complete. Not one of our works is by half. The creation is all complete and perfect. Even more, there are many things that are not of absolute necessity, but like luxury and pomp of our power, love, and magnificence. Should man alone, for whom all things were created, remain like an incomplete and imperfect work of our own, without the purpose for which he was created, that is, for our Fiat to have its kingdom in each creature? And this because he sinned and remained stained and degraded, that rendered him like a collapsing house, exposed to his thieves and enemies, as if our power were limited and did not have all the power to do what it wants, the way it wants it, and when it wants it? Whoever thinks that the kingdom of our will cannot come puts our very supreme power in doubt. We can do anything. We might lack the willingness, but when we want it, our power is so great that whatever we want, we do. There is nothing that can resist before our power. Therefore we have the power to rehabilitate him, to render him more beautiful than before, and to fortify and cement his collapsing house in such a way as to render it stronger than it used to be, and at the blowing breath of our power shut his thieves and enemies into the darkest abysses. So as much as man slipped from within our divine will, he did not cease to be our work, and even though he disordered himself, our power, for the decorum of our work, that must be perfect and complete just as we want it, will put with its power a limit to his disorders, to his weaknesses, and will say to him with its empire, "Enough up to here. Re-enter into the order. Take your place of honor as a work worthy of your Creator." These are prodigies of our omnipotence that it will perform, that he will not have the strength to resist, but without strain, spontaneously, drawn and attracted by a supreme force, by an invincible love. Wasn't redemption wanted by our will, a prodigy of our power and of our love that knows how to conquer everything, even the most awful ingratitudes, the gravest sins, and requite in love there where ungrateful man offended it the most? If it is about man, of course he will not be able to stand up again in spite of all the helps of my redemption, because he is not disposed to taking them. Many do not cease to be sinners, weak, smeared with the gravest sins. But if it is about my power, about my love, when the two scales overflow a little bit more and touch him with the will to conquer him, man will feel shaken and floored in such a way that he will rise again from evil to good, and will re-enter into our divine will from which he went out, so as to take his lost inheritance. Do you know where everything lays? Everything is in whether our will wants it and has decided it with divine decrees. If this is there, everything is done, and this decision is so true that there are facts. You must know that when I came upon earth, while I did the office of Redeemer, at the same time everything that my holy humanity did enclosed as many acts of my divine will as a deposit to be given to the creature. I had no need of it because I was the divine will itself. So my humanity acted like a most tender mother. It enclosed within itself as many birds from my will for as many acts as it did, in order to give birth to them and deliver them onto the lap of the acts of creatures, so as to form in their acts the kingdom of the acts of my Fiat. So it is there, like a mother, with a love that makes her agonize, waiting to give birth to these divine offsprings of hers. The other fact is that I myself taught the Our Father, so that all would pray for my kingdom to come, so that my will be done on earth as it is in heaven. If it were not to come, teaching such a prayer would have been useless, and useless things I know not how to do. And then, the many truths manifested about my divine will, do they not say in clear notes that its kingdom will come upon earth, not by human work, but by the work of our omnipotence? Everything is possible when we want it. We place as much ease in doing small things as we do in great ones, because all the virtue and power is in our act, not in the good that the act of our power receives. In fact, when I was on earth, since in all my acts ran my power, the touch of my hands, the empire of my voice, and so forth, were all made powerful, and with the same ease with which I called to life the little girl who had died a few hours before, with that same ease I called to life Lazarus, who had been dead for 4 days, who was already corrupted, and gave off an unbearable stench. I commanded that the bandages be removed from him, and then I called Lazarus, with the empire of my voice, "Lazarus, come out!" At my commanding voice, he came back healthy and hearty as if he had not died. True example of how my power can make the kingdom of my Fiat rise again in the midst of creatures. This is a tangible and sure example of how my power, in spite of the fact that man is corrupted and the stench of his sins infects him more than a cadaver, he can be called a poor one wrapped in bandages, who has need of the divine empire in order to be freed of the bandages of his passions. But if the empire of my power invests him and wants it, his corruption will have no more life, and he will rise again, healthy and more beautiful than before. Therefore, at the most, one can doubt that my divine will might not want it, because they could not deserve a good so great. But that my power would not be able to do it? Not this. Ever. April 2nd, 1933, Volume 32. How the breath and heartbeat of God is the I love you. His love is generative and operating. The greatest prodigy is enclosing his life in the creature. My little soul feels the extreme need of living in the arms of the divine Fiat, and since I am just newly born, I am weak, and I do not know how to take one step alone. And if I would want to try to do it, I would take a false step and risk the danger of doing some evil to myself. Therefore, fearing for myself, I abandon myself even more in its arms, telling it, "If you want something done, let us do it together, because by myself I do not know how to do anything." And then I feel in myself a continuous love, a motion, a breath that is not mine, but so fused together that I do not know how to tell well if it is mine or if it is not mine. And while I was preoccupied, my sovereign Jesus surprising me, all goodness told me, "My blessed daughter, you must know that our divine being is nothing other than a substance all of love, such that as a consequence, everything that is inside and outside of us, everything is love. Therefore our breath is love, and the air that we breathe is love. Our heartbeat is love. And while we palpitate love, it forms the circulation of pure love in our divine being, with a course that never stops. And this circulation, while it conserves our life in the pure and perfect equilibrium of love, it gives love to everyone and would want love from everyone. And everything that is not love does not enter into us, nor can it enter, nor will it find the place to put itself. The fullness of our love would burn everything that was not pure and holy love. But who directs this life of ours, all of love? The light, the sanctity, the power, the all-seeingness, the immensity of our will that fills heaven and earth with our supreme being in a way that there is no place where it does not find itself, because it does not know how to do anything other than love and give love. But it is not a sterile love and will. No, no. It is fecund, and it generates continuously. It is operating, and inside of one single breath of love, it forms the most beautiful and marvelous works, the most unheard of prodigies, so much so that all the human sciences feel themselves ignorant before our littlest work, and confused, they are dumbfounded. Now listen to me, good daughter, to the great prodigy of our life in the creature that no one else, for whatever love and power that he could have, can boast of saying, I can bilocate myself, and while I remain what I am, I can form another life of mine inside of a person who I love. It would be mad and absurd to say it. Neither angel nor saint has this power. Only your God, your Jesus, has this power, because our being is fullness, is totality, is everything and fills everything. And in the immensity in which it finds itself, that envelops everything, it breathes, and with a simple breath we form our divine life in the creature. And our will dominates her and nourishes her and makes her grow, and forms the great prodigy of enclosing our divine life in the little circle of the soul of the creature. This is why your continuous I love you is ours. It is the breath of our life. It is our heartbeat that does not know how to palpitate other than I love you, I love you, I love you. This serves to maintain our life that does not know how to do anything other than love, give love, and want love. Therefore, while this I love you is ours, it is our breath and also yours, because while we give you love, you give us love, and fused together ours is woven with your I love you. They meet each other, become one with each other, and one I love you alone is felt, while they are two, that enrapturing each other in turn, form one alone. But who feels this life alive and palpitating in her? One who lives in our will. She feels ours, and we feel hers, and we live together. All the other creatures keep it suffocated, and they live as if they did not have it. And my love gives and does not receive, and I live in them with a sorrowful and delirious love, without anyone knowing that I am in them. Therefore be attentive, and let your I love you be continuous, because it is nothing other than the outlet of mine. After this I was doing my round in creation, and in virtue of its divine immensity, I felt its palpitating life in created things, that with indescribable love it waits for the heartbeat of the I love you of my littleness. So I thought to myself, what will be the difference there is between the way in which God remains in creation and the way in which he remains in the soul of the creature? And my always lovable Jesus, all goodness added, my daughter, there is a great difference between the one and the other. In created things our divinity is in the creating and conserving act, neither adding nor removing anything of what it has done, because each created thing possesses the fullness of the good that it encloses. The sun possesses the fullness of light, the sky the totality of the extension of its azure mantle, the sea the fullness of waters, and so forth. They can say, we have no need of anything, such as the abundance that we possess, that we can give without exhausting ourselves, and therefore we give perfect glory to our Creator. On the other hand, in the human creature, our divine act is creating, conserving, operating, and growing. Our love never says enough for her, no, but it always wants to give and operate new things. And if she corresponds to us, our operating virtue remains always in motion. Now we give her new love, now new light, now new science, new sanctity, new beauty. Our operating virtue never ceases. We always want to give, and by giving we operate. By creating the creature, we opened the commerce between heaven and earth, and we placed in traffic our operating way, we to give, and she to receive. And what is more, we want her together to operate. We do not want to do it alone. If we were capable of sorrow, it would embitter our happiness if we did not hold her together with us. And from our love and operating act rises our always growing act, such that the creature remains under the reign of our love and creating, conserving, operating, and growing act. End of April 2nd. Fiat.